and welcome to Traditional Painting the Digital Way. This is where I use digital painting apps to teach traditional painting techniques. This is part 3 of my Southwest Saguaro series, and in this video we're going to work on the middle ground and the foreground and also start on the cactuses. If you're following along with traditional materials such as acrylics, check out part 1 of this series where I have a list of all my brushes, canvases, and paint that I use. The app that I'm using is ArtRage 5 for Windows, and we're going to go ahead and start with the distant mountains again. And the layer of mountains that is farthest from your eye is a little bit too light. So I want to go ahead and just darken that a little bit, and you can do that by putting a little bit of a light glaze over it. And so I'm using the driest brush in ArtRage 5, and if you're following along traditionally with acrylic paint, just take a very thin paint mixture and lightly glaze it over your distant mountains, and that will make them a little bit darker. Then we want to start on the middle ground, and the photo reference that I'm using shows sagebrush and all kinds of different vegetation there, but it's kind of a sage green color. So you want to go ahead and get some yellow ochres mixed there and throw in a little bit of purple and just try to kind of make that look like there's a distant flat out there with greasewood brush and all kinds of different vegetation that you find out in the desert, but we don't want any details. And just kind of use the instant blur brush to make everything smudge together, because again, we don't need any big details. We're just trying to give indications of the flats right against the mountains. And if you're using your acrylic paints, you'll want to use yellow ochre, probably throw in some Hooker's green and a little bit of dioxazine purple, and just lighten it up with white acrylic gesso. And you can use your number 10 bristle brush, because we don't need any fine detail. We just kind of want a little bit of an indication. And then here I'm also adding in the distant brush, and this will probably be a yellow ochre and Hooker's green mixed together for your acrylic painters. And just go ahead and make it sort of uneven and rough looking. And so I'm using kind of the frosted spots brush in ArtRage 5 just to make it look like there's clumps of brush far off, and we don't want big detail, but again, we want indications of the desert brush that you can see. And the photo that I have from Pixabay, which is a royalty-free website, it shows it a little bit right there in the distance, all the brush. You can look at that photo reference. I have another one here that I'm looking at that also shows the distant middle ground, and this is all middle ground. This is still not close-up foreground or anything. And if you're following along with your acrylics, you can use your number 8 filbert brush and just tap the end of your brush on your canvas to get that clumpy, jagged edge. And then I want to start with the foreground hill right here, and so I'm just doing the underpainting, which will be the first layer of paint, and I'm throwing in burnt umber colors, and you can use cadmium orange if you're following along with your acrylics, and purples, just trying to get kind of a dirt color here. We're not working on the vegetation right now. I'm just scumbling in a whole bunch of different dirt colors, different browns, shades of browns. And scumbling means rough strokes, which is what I'm doing. Just putting in rough strokes. And just go ahead and sort of shape your little hill here, and And then I'm going to go ahead and sort of blend in the strokes a little bit, but I still want them to look kind of rough. So I'm using the heavy blurred frosting brush. It works fairly well in ArtRage 5. And just kind of smudge them together, but you don't have to make it real smooth because we want all the different colors to still show through on your hill, because it will give indications of rocks and dirt and vegetation and things like that. And then I'm working a little bit more on the middle ground, and I'm adding a little bit more of the green colors. Make shades of green here, kind of sage green colors, and if you're following along with your acrylics, you'll just have to mix yellow ochre and hooker's green and white, and just kind of vary that. You can also throw in dioxazine purple, and that will gray the color a little bit and make it not quite so intense, because we're still not looking real close with the middle ground. The middle ground is part of the aerial perspective that you'll use, and so it's not quite as intense. It's a little bit still faded. So you want to kind of keep that a little bit less intense than the foreground. And so here I'm adding in jagged lines to kind of just give indications of the different brush that's out there, and patches of grass. There's going to be patches of yellow looking grass out there and different bushes, and so you just kind of want to give sort of a Z shape to that, just kind of a zigzag shape to your darker bushes and also the lighter ones, and just kind of make sure that they're rough. We don't want them smoothed out. You can smudge it, but keep the edges not straight lines or anything. We want everything to look sort of jagged and uneven. And then we want to go ahead and start working on the saguaros a little bit. And again, to show perspective, you're going to have the saguaros in the back be a lot smaller. And you can use sort of a grayish green color for the saguaros, and just make them with different numbers of arms if you want to, and make them real small in the back there at first. And so I'm kind of using one of the pencils to give a jagged edge to the saguaros, because they're going to have stickers on the edge and everything, and they're not smooth looking. So you kind of want a little bit of a jagged edge on the saguaro cactuses here. And if you're following along with your acrylic paint, the colors that you would mix would be dioxazine purple and hooker's green, and add some white, because you still want them to be a lighter color than the ones that are going to be closer into the foreground. And I'm putting a few out there in the brush, just like they're sort of poking out of the middle of the brush out there, and just make tiny little indications of them. Add a little bit of some arms on them, and keep that color light as well. And then I'm just kind of working around and putting in clumps, I guess, different groups of cactuses there. They kind of grow in groups, and so I'm adding some with arms, some with 2, some with 3. They have a whole bunch of different arms actually, and some of them have a lot of arms, but I'm just putting in ones that have 1 or 2 or no arms, just for simplicity's sake in this picture. But they actually grow with lots of different arms. Some of them have like 10 or 12 arms on them, and they're kind of like lumps and little balls stuck on the side, but we kind of just want to make these more aesthetically pleasing. And so I'm adding them closer to the viewer's eye now, and so they're going to be a little bit darker. So you can add dioxazine purple to your acrylic mixture if you're painting with acrylics, and just kind of make them a little bit darker. And just go ahead and make sure that you keep the edges rough, because again, they've got stickers and ridges all over them, and so they're not going to look real smooth. And I'm using a pencil variant in ArtRage 5 here to kind of get that look. And you can sort of add greens and purples to them just to kind of get the underpainting right here. We'll highlight them later. But right now we're just kind of interested in getting the shapes, and we want them to look aesthetically pleasing and draw the viewer's eye into the painting. So this is the end of part 3 of my Southwest Saguaro series. And in part 4, we're going to work more on the cactuses and the brush that's in the foreground, and add a bunch of highlights to the cactuses and make them look more three-dimensional. So thanks everybody for watching. Thank you so much for your support. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments down below, and I will catch you later.